Okay, great. Okay, well, welcome everyone tonight to the fifth Wednesday meeting of Albany CERT. So Albany CERT has we meet whenever there's a fifth Wednesday a month, which really means that we end up meeting about 4 times a year. So we're really pleased for you to join us tonight. And the theme, I'm going to share slides here. So theme of tonight is resolve to be prepared. It's the beginning of a new year, 2024, and I figured that it's always a good time, new year, new me, new us, new CERT, new community in terms of how we prepare for disaster. We have a number of different topics, and I have some notes to share that you can follow along, and there's a QR code that you can find the notes. We'll also be sending the notes out on the Groups IO mail list for Albany CERT. So the goals of this meeting, thought that if you were around Albany CERT last year, we had an organizing theme for much of the year, and that was a big earthquake on the Hayward Fault, and it helped us organize our thinking. So we're thinking, or at least there's something that occurred to me that if we're looking for a theme this year, then one theme couldn't be wildfire, and could be this is the beginning of the year when it's actually raining outside, when we're not, a peak worry about a fire season. Seems like a really good time to actually start thinking hard again about the upcoming fire season, whenever that is. So we'll talk a bit about that. We'll also be talking about our ongoing effort to recognize our block captains. Then we want to give you a little update on how to use, it used to be called Zonehaven, it's called Genasys, to look up where you are on a map so that you can get really localized updates that are relevant to you in an emergency. Then Blake will tell us about some of our thoughts about how we might better organize our efforts around the multilingual communities that are in Albany. And then we plan to leave a fair amount of time to talk about what you'd like to discuss this year, what you think are priorities for our community. So we're Albany CERT. We're a 501c3 that was organized, that was formed a few years ago rising out of the CERT program that was located in the fire department of Albany. And what we're focused on is preparing the community for emergency response. And many of us have been trained through the FEMA CERT program. So I think that I want to talk so briefly about wildfire preparedness, and just want to share personal reflections on that a bit, and then invite Michael Gold to talk specifically about the things that are happening in Albany. It was right at the beginning of the year when, I don't know if any of you are also KQED forum listeners, when heard interview with Manuela Martin. She's a writer, and she just come out with a new book called The Last Fire Season. And I have a copy of it. Well, I don't have a physical copy of it, but I have it on my Kindle here, in my Kindle app, called The Last Fire Season. This is Manuel Martin, lives in Sonoma County, and this is a book about the 2020 fire season, and about how she and her husband and their family kind of dealt with fleeing the fire and thinking. Is also a very deep and lyrical meditation on kind of what we're all dealing with, the reality, kind of new, relatively new reality of having fire seasons in California. I was thinking, just thinking about the last year, a few years, and trying to recall when do we start to really worry about like a fire season happening like every year. And I was thinking, at least for me, it felt like maybe 2017 or so when we started to have to worry about like air quality and N95 masks. And I remember in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic when there was all of a sudden this awareness that masking would be very useful to contain the pandemic. And I was thinking, oh yeah, we already have some N95 masks, and we had those because of fire and smoke. And then those of us in Albany we remember, well, in 2022, September 9th, I looked up the exact date, was the day the sky turned orange. And that was an incredibly freaky, freaky event. And I think we'll all remember that day. And then those of us who live on a hill, Albany Hill, like I do, and Blake and Michael, will remember like about a year and a half ago when there was a fire on the hill, and there were those helicopters zooming over, telling us to flee, like to get out. And so my wife and I got in our car and drove away. So it's very much on our mind. And I don't know if you're like me also, who I remember when the rain started just last year and thinking, okay, wow, we survived another like fire season. And but then thinking, well, we get a little respite, a little respite, but how long will that last? And so this book, I had the opportunity to hear um, Manuela Martin talk about her book at Books Inc. a few days ago. It was on Monday night, and she's on a book tour right now. You know, I've been thinking about how, you know, in our CERT community, we try to deal with very practical realities of emergency preparedness, and that's our main focus. But we're also dealing with just the fundamental gigantic realities of how our lives, our planet, our very way of being are being changed. And so I've been thinking, wondering whether there'd be any interest in, for example, doing a book study together. I'm going to be reading this book and be very interested in sharing thoughts with other people in the community. So I just put that out there as just one thing, kind of a different take on what we've been doing so far in Albany CERT.
Could you repeat the title of the book?
The
We'll
title,
drop it in the chat.
yeah, the
Oh, okay,
last
great. Thank you.
fires. I'll
Last,
put notes. I'll put a link to the book,
okay,
KQED forum interview, and to book reviews and all that. And I'll
okay.
drop up a photo of the book event even. And I
Thank
thought even if there's any interest, I did think about perhaps we can try to invite Manuel Martin to be a speaker and to an event if that's something that we want to pursue. So that's like one angle of wildfire preparedness, and obviously it's a big topic. There are many different aspects to it, and I think that it could be something that's really worthwhile for us to be pursuing in detail this year, and to help us like think about the very local angle of wildfire preparedness. I'm going to turn over to Michael Gold to give us an update on his perspectives on what's happening in Albany, and particularly Albany Hill.
Thank you very much, Raymond. I'm going to hit the share screen. That will stop your screen sharing. So I hope that this is going to work for folks. So Raymond was talking to me about the last fire season yesterday, and I mentioned that the Albany Hill Eucalyptus project is underway right now, and he asked me about that, and then he said maybe we ought to talk about this tonight. The city has started a capital improvement project, mostly mostly with money from the Coastal Commission, some of it from us folks in Albany in our budget. Talking about the city budget. Several $100,000 are being spent on studies of what shall we do on Albany Hill. Now, the picture I'm showing you here is a fire in 1923. We just had the 100th anniversary of a fire that started on Shasta Road and came as far as the campus. Right adjacent to the campus, that would be Hearst Street in Shattuck. So
yeah, this is Berkeley, not the Albany Hill.
This is Berkeley, but the point is that a fire can go from up down there to the flats. And it so happens that, well, there's a aerial of it, but point was it started out in the hills. 1,000 students lost their homes. Many professors and teachers did too. The reason this article came out in the 90s was because the news back then was professors and teachers lose homes, but 1,000 students did as well. There's a page here. All these links I'm gonna paste to the chat window at the end. There's going to be a document with all these links. We've had about a dozen fires in the Oakland Berkeley Hills. The tunnel fire in 1901, I'm just going to point out, was pretty serious, and there was an east wind that day. Now, what does all this have to do with Albany? As everyone who is involved in the Eucalyptus project is mindful that we have some challenges here that are above and beyond just the fact that we're an East Bay Hill with a lot of trees. Albany Hill has some very particular risks I'm going to talk about tonight as briefly as I can. Just want you to be aware that there's this project, that the eucalyptus are not in good shape. A study of the East Bay region basically put almost the entire park and the private property adjacent in what's called the dieback area. Basically, I didn't see any other park in the East Bay that virtually the entire park is considered dieback.
Mark, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the eucalyptus is in bad shape. That's the next thing I'm about to say.
So, I mean, I'm not looking at your pictures. I'm blind. So what park are you talking about?
Oh, sorry, Sheila. I'll do my best to interpret. Basically, I've shown some maps that indicate that fire can go from the hills to the flats. And I also showed a map showing that the entirety of Albany, nearly the entirety of Albany Hill Park, is in what is called the eucalyptus dieback zone. That means that some few thousand eucalyptus are in trouble here. They are at risk of, they're dying of old age. They're dying of some pathogens, fungi, and they're a fire risk. And the story gets a little twistier. What are we going to do about it? Here's a page I'll describe. It's a list of pathogens that UC Berkeley researcher found, 7 different pathogens in the eucalyptus on Albany Hill. We'll stay with that for a second. The point is that we have a fire risk here from trees that are dying and fuel load. Now, at the same time, some of these exact same trees are home to monarch butterflies. And people in Albany, I think there is some consensus that we need to preserve and improve monarch habitat. The Eucalyptus Project is about improving the hill, so that reducing the fuel load on the hill while preserving monarch habitat and habitat for migratory birds and some other critters I could mention. That's a tough problem. So in the course of solving it, the city has made, here's another map. This is a map of predicted fire intensity. It's pretty serious. I'm going to rattle off some statistics here. Now, we have potential for 20-foot flames. We have potential for 80-foot per minute flame spread. We have potential for flames to spread to El Cerrito Plaza. That's what these reports that the city has commissioned with the money I referred to, that's what these reports say. Drones were flown, scientists were hired, these analyses were performed. That's for a southwest wind. The east wind that caused the tunnel fire and the fire in Berkeley I mentioned, those could be maybe worse, maybe. So we have this project. It's using very advanced technology. Here's a different drone that went over the hill with LiDAR to characterize the butterfly habitat. And we have this process of developing a forest management and habitat restoration plan in one. How do we reduce the fuel load and protect the butterflies? It's not an easy job. What you need to know right now is that the consultants and other professionals the city has hired are working to develop three alternative plans to accomplish this. And we will be asked to weigh in on what is your view of the best way to manage fire risk and protect habitat. It's a hard problem. I wouldn't want it to be on my shoulders. Let's see, I think I have one or two quick ones. Yeah, there are guidelines for managing monarch butterfly overwintering habitat from the Xerxes Society. That's kind of like the World Wildlife Fund of insects. And finally, I'd like to point out something very practical, what the Woodside fire chief sends everyone in Woodside. He recommends mowing monthly. He recommends mowing rather high, 8 to 12 inches. Why? Because there's wildflowers and state grass under there. You don't want to mow it all down. That's his recommendation. Wildflowers and state grass is the thing that burns the slowest. That's what I have to say tonight. Thanks for your patience. Any questions? Or Raymond, you may want to take back the control of the meeting.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that really informative summary. So I think at this point, just like to open up for some questions, discussion. We don't want to take up the rest of the meeting on this topic, but that there's a lot to talk about at this point.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I always think this has really been very, very carefully studied. I know a lot of people say, well, gee, the drought is, everyone's saying the trees were weakened by the drought, but gosh, we've got all this water and aren't they all going to come back? These trees are damaged beyond coming back. They are dead and dying. I mean, they're all in that category. You could tell from the pictures that they were not healthy trees. So it's just a matter of time before all of them just become big fuel sources close together, standing there on the hill waiting for a spark to set them off. So, Michael, I was kind of interested that there'll be these, it seems surprising they would have actually 3 different approaches. And then to think that the public would weigh in and preference one, it seems highly special. I'm kind of surprised they're not, especially with the butterfly situation. I would think there would really be only one, and that would be kind of a compromise all around anyway.
Well, there are very different views that I can easily think of 2 very opposing views of what ought to be done that people have strong feelings about. Resolving the perspective of those 2 groups alone is going to be a challenge. Why they came up with the number 3 instead of 2, I can't quite follow. But certainly I know people who are at odds with one another about what the plan ought to be. I know volunteers who are at odds with one another about what the plan ought to be.
I just wanted to chime in, Brian Martin. I'm on the Parks Commission, and this topic comes before the commission every so often, and occasionally before the city council. So keep you know, and whenever it comes before the Parks Commission, we're getting updates and a potential for public input and commission input. So that's an opportunity to keep up on some of the latest. And if people want me to send out a heads up, I don't know if there's a CERT mailing list, or something that could let people know when the topic's coming up again. I can do that. Otherwise, people can follow the city calendar.
Brian, when it comes up before the PROSC, Parks, Recreation, Open Space Commission, I certainly would like to know about that. Yes, I know I can look that up on the city website, but I'm more likely to be hearing stuff from the Eucalyptus Project mail list, which if I can find the chat window, I was going to paste all these links in.
I think the city runs that though, don't they?
The Eucalyptus Project mail list, I'm not sure who the admin is, but it's I know that it's a way to slip messages directly to the consultants. If you have a concern, a restoration design group will read it. The Grassland Restore, there's a separate one. Creekside Science will see it. The mail list is a way to get your input to them and their output to you, but not to PROSC. I want to know what PROSC is doing, the Parks and Recreation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that slipped through the cracks for me. That's probably something the consultants set up for public input, continuous public input, and to send information out to interested parties. They may actually send out information when it's before PROSC or the city council, but I'd be happy to send an email out. And pardon my ignorance, but does CERT have an email, like a Google group that anybody can broadcast to?
On groups.io, and it's someone else can rattle off the address. I can't think of it off the top of my head. It's easy. Is it Albany CERT at groups.io?
I think so. It's certainly on our webpage.
It's certainly at albanysert.org.
Yeah.
That link should be, it's albanysert.org.
So I have an interesting thing to point out.
Sure.
Did anybody catch which way the wind was coming from, at least earlier in the day today?
Not today, but I've measured east winds in the last 2 weeks, certainly.
This one was coming from the southeast, and then it changed later in the afternoon it started to come from the west, which surprised me.
Well, a characteristic of the Diablo wind, this is exactly what that just tells you we're having the Diablo wind. It is not only prevailing from the east, but it shifts. That's the weird thing, and that is really bad for fire because it can sort of slosh the fire around before it then goes back to its easterly. And this is not our normal wind, but that was the wind in the tunnel fire in 91, and that was the wind in the fire in 23 that I talked about.
The last thing I want to say for now is what I know is that I'm very distressed when trees are ripped out in the name of fire mitigation. I am no expert. I don't pretend to be, but those trees make oxygen for us to breathe. So I would like to see better stewardship, and I would look to the Ohlone. I don't know who else to look to, but I'm sure that they would. And I don't live in Albany, so, but I do live in Oakland, and I live in the flats. I live on Fruitvale Avenue. But our side streets can get hilly. I'm kind of near MacArthur. So
Sheila, I'd like to do some interpretation of the picture because that's showing right now, because I think it's relevant to what you're saying. On the right is a picture of about 150 to 200 monarch butterflies in a tree at the top of Albany Hill from November to 2022. And on the left is a picture of fire damage on the hill that I can testify has damaged monarch habitat. The fire itself did it. That fire was arson. Um, while I'm talking about fuel load reduction, I am also talking about monarch habitat protection. And I don't think I or anyone knows what those three plans ought to be right now. And I wouldn't want to be the consultants who are tasked with producing those plans. But what you're saying is absolutely, we can't just willy-nilly shave the hill off. I'm not sure it's legal. Some might dispute that, but I would dispute. It's not perfectly clear to me that we can just wipe out monarch habitat willy-nilly. I hope that responds to your concern, because I have the same concern.
Good. All
There's
right.
a lot more to talk
I
about
just
there,
know
but we can't let
I
this
just
one take over the whole meeting, though. We have a number of other agenda items I'm mindful of.
I have a question too. I just want to throw it out there and see what happens to it. Um, when we're in the middle of rainy season, we're talking floods, we're talking landslides, we're talking, um, sorry about that. We're talking things about, I'll be quiet. So there goes my phone telling me it's going to rain tomorrow. No kidding. Um, but the landslides happen the when the topsoil is not working correctly, not like the topsoil goes away because the trees have fallen. And so I think fire and flood are connected in a weird way.
The landslide risk on the hill is indeed an ancillary consequence. It's also a fundamental risk on the hill. We weren't going to talk about this tonight, but please look at your FEMA maps and know whether or not you've got a landslide risk where you live. I live on the hill. I certainly do. It's on the FEMA map. These are very real. And then you can really freak out thinking about what happens if we get an earthquake in the rain and it triggers a landslide. But, this brings up something very important. This is a CERT meeting, and I'm talking about some scary stuff. When I talked, somebody wanted to post one of my emails to the list. Somebody wanted to post to Facebook. I thought, I'm not sure. And I asked some other volunteers. I showed them the posting about this material. Volunteers who are involved in ecological restoration, wildlife monitoring, creek maintenance, every one of them said, no, this is scary stuff. It's going to alienate volunteers. It's going to demotivate them. I wasn't going to mention that, but I'm a little concerned. This is a meeting that among people who are concerned with disaster prep, and you have grit, you are resilient. I'm talking to you because that's who you are. I don't talk to my neighbors this way. It would freak them out. I hope I didn't say anything too outrageous there.
It's context is a lot of things. But again, it's a gnarly problem, and appreciate getting more information on it and look forward to seeing what those plans are. So, Raymond, if you want to take over, we could go into I think next is block captain stuff.
Yes. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Do I have to do anything? I can't seem to.
No, I think I'm gonna be able to share.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now I'm sharing the screen, and we'll move to the
So
next
just if
slide.
you jump to the next slide.
I'm going to find the chat window now and stick those links in.
Great, thank you. So my name's Nick Peterson. I've been an Albany resident for probably 30 years, and actually was born and raised in Berkeley. I actually had a babysitter when I was a kid who used to tell us about the big Berkeley fire, and that she was playing piano accompanying a person at what was then sort of the community theater at the high school. And they started hearing all the sirens, and it was really disastrous. I mean, there was a huge amount of Berkeley that burned down up into the hills and right down to campus and into the flat area. And they almost lost more. Anyway, fire is very real, and we need to we need to all be ready, and part of being ready is having block captains. So again, if you're on this meeting and you think you're an active block captain, please send an email to Albany CERT, just Albany CERT @gmail.com, and say, yes, I'm a block captain, and we'll send you a little questionnaire or plug you into a questionnaire. Actually, Michael's putting together an online way to do the questionnaire. And we've been working with Albany CERT Inc., which is this nonprofit that we're in, has been working directly with the City of Albany Fire Department, which is the one who leads disaster preparation for the city, to go over old lists of block captains and try to find out who's still active, who's still doing block captains in Arizona. We don't know who is on their block, who is someone else, and trying to really pull that information together so we know, primarily so we know where the block captains are, and when people move into the neighborhood, they can contact them. But also to know where they aren't and where we need to start advocating and recruiting new block captains. So in the past, I mean, even if you go to the city's webpage on block captains right now, which is under the fire department's web section, Albany had a pretty robust block captain program after the Loma Prieta. It sort of was sprung out of the Loma Prieta earthquake that happened. And by 1997, there were approximately 125 block captains, which provided pretty good coverage. And this little map image I have here, it isn't up to date yet, but it's pretty close. But where you see all those yellow dots, the yellow dots were block captains around Albany at that time. And this is from a very old list that one of our members happened to have in her files from about that time. And then the green ones are ones that we currently know exist now. And I haven't put them all in there. This probably shows maybe half of what we have. And then the red is where there was never a block captain, and we need and still need a block captain. So the way to look at this is that green means there's a block captain doing the role on that block. The dot isn't exactly where they live. It's just that block is, the houses on that section of street are covered. Yellow means maybe, but probably not, because it was so long ago. I mean, 97 is quite a while ago. And then red means there's no coverage at all. So we've started updating the list. It's a big task because there's about 250 names that all have to be contacted. So far, I've been doing that, and I've gotten through maybe 30 of them. Most of the responses are, no, I'm not doing it anymore, or they don't live here anymore, or they don't exist. So in doing that, just going through maybe 10% of the existing names, we've come to a total of, well, it's less than 20 active block captains that we know of in Albany. So we really would like to have, ideally, pushing 200. There are 190 if you look at every little block, and some blocks can be combined with others, if it makes sense. But generally, you need somewhere just under, a couple hundred block captains. So we have 10% of that, which is probably not good. So ACERT's goal is to update the block captain list and recruit more block captains in non-represented locations. Now, some of these areas, you look at this and you realize, if you go there, we used to have, and you can see these dots, yellow dots that are next to Albany Hill on the west side. And we used to have at least one person in each condo development that was sort of said they'd be a block. I don't know quite how you're a block captain for 500 units. But anyway, there's a need to sort of, each one of these condominium developments has their own sort of emergency response plan, and the fire department deals pretty much directly with them. But it is an area that we would like to get more contact with people and know what's going on. Then there's also University Village when you get down to this area that's called Ocean View. That sort of multicolored zone is all, well, one's the, actually it's further down, right where it says Ocean View. That's all the student housing. And UC runs their own emergency response kind of programs. But again, is yellowed there, that changes quite frequently because student turnover is so high. So it would be great to have some sort of participation in Albany's overall program from the student housing group. And then you can see how it breaks out in the rest of the neighborhoods. So anyway, it's a big task. Would love for people to step up. If you've done the CERT training, you don't have to be CERT trained to be a block captain, but if you've done the CERT training and you're interested in it, it usually shows, you've taken an extra step in participating. Please send an email to albanysert@gmail.com saying you want to be a block captain in your neighborhood. Would really appreciate it. So
I
next
have
slide.
another question. I have another question, a quick one, I
Oh,
think.
okay.
Have
I'll
you
leave this
have
up.
you guys dealt with the Berkeley Student Co-op? They're not part of the UC system, but they have a bunch of houses all over around Berkeley. And
Yeah, well, they're
they,
not in all, I mean, again, we just focus on Albany. They're on north side, Berkeley, south side. I actually lived for 2 years in a student co-op when I was at UC Berkeley. So pretty aware of them, but that's way outside the physical location of what we're sort of coordinating with.
I only
I'm just,
mention them. I only mention them because we're already doing emergency preparedness 101 presentations to them. And I don't know, we've gotten connected with Berkeley Ready and we're connected a little bit with the Berkeley Emergency Services. And I only mention that to say, at the very beginning, folks were talking about, who might need help in Berkeley and all this stuff. And mutual aid, the fire doesn't care which side of the line on the map it is he's going to go where he wants to go. So we all want to be ready. The other thing, the quickie thing is, what about amateur radio? Have you guys gotten into that at all?
yes, we have. And actually, we've talked about that before. I mean, there is an Albany radio group that's associated with Albany CERT. And maybe a little later on, Michael Gold is very involved in that, has lots of contacts in Berkeley and Richmond and El Cerrito and Kensington. And we're certainly working with the city on how to set up resilience hubs that would have connection between one another and between the Emergency Operations Center. So we are developing that sort of simultaneously. This particular topic is block captains, and just to give a little bit more on it, so block captain is an embedded person on a block that lives, and is there for a while and sort of knows the people, the neighbors around, and takes on the task of just organizing and meeting with neighbors to make them more aware about emergency preparedness, helps them develop their emergency response plans, make sure they have emergency supplies, at least up to the level that's recommended by emergency response groups. And then also maybe has occasional meetings where you go to get together and talk about how you'd respond. It organizes a map of the block with ways that people can contact one another, and sort of generally stays in touch with block members. So when and if there is a more large-scale disaster, they can organize their block and then get information in and out to either the city responders or other organizations that come in, and can be in a rather stabilized and somewhat organized state instead of just panicking wildly. So again, I'm sorry. Did someone have a question? Oh, I thought I heard someone speak. So anyway, that's a block captain. Raymond can pop to the next slide. So I kind of jumped ahead of myself. So the block captain's primary role is to help neighbors get organized. Typical block captain activities, conducts meetings regarding disaster preparedness. Usually you kick that off. You might have a block party, something like that. Distribute informative flyers or emails about emergency supply lists. One thing as a block captain that I do is I let my block always know when emergency supplies are available. There are adjacent communities that have bulk purchasing programs for emergency water containers, and I always let people know when that happens. So there's good information that you can cull together and then distribute to your neighbors so that they're aware of it. And you might even take it to a level of range, meeting topics and activities undertaken, maybe finding out where meter locations are. The other idea is a block captain maybe isn't, especially if a big block, it's nice to have sort of, helpers or co-captains who can step in if you're not available and can handle certain tasks. They might deal with emergency supplies or medical response, something like that. All of this has been taken and distilled down from the block captain manual, which is available on the city website under the fire department disaster preparedness. And if you go to the block captain section, you can find it there. Next slide. So here's an example. Thank you, Michael, for providing this. Here's an example of a block of Cerrito Street. And each white band is a house. It's not to scale, but it does look like the blocks in Albany, which are narrow and long. And then it would have a description of the address, a description of what the house looks like, and then, which is blurred out, who lives there and how to contact them. And this map is made available to the residents on the block. It is not made available outside of that. Generally, when block captains put together this kind of information, it is just for the people who have agreed, and they have to agree to be on this and to share it with one another. But it's a very helpful thing for people to do, even if you're concerned, oh, gee, I'm kind of concerned. I haven't seen what's their name. Let me give them a call. So, this becomes a tool to sort of bind the group a little closer together. So then there's other things block captains can do. And again, this comes out of the block captain manual. Maybe one of the more important ones is gathering the information of block members, determine special needs and skills on the block. When a big earthquake happens, it might be nice to know that, that person 4 houses up, is a registered nurse. That's a good thing to know. Or this person down here is an electrician, or that one across the street is a carpenter, or a plumber. Those kind of pieces of information become really valuable when you're in desperate need of making things livable again. So you could even get as far as scheduling meetings with guest speakers. The fire department will come out. You organize a block, they'll come out and talk about disaster preparedness if you get a certain number of your neighbors together. It's good to do some sort of annual get together. It could be a city. We've talked, we're sort of trying to get back to where you have a citywide disaster drill. That might be better to maybe try to do just a zone by zone, and it would sort of rotate around the city and people could come and participate. But it's always good to run through certain actions you need to do, just so you're not rusty about them when you actually need them. Next slide. So becoming a block captain is really pretty straightforward and simple. You can find more information. So I mentioned it's on the city's website. If you go to the city website, when it first opens up, there's a bunch of tabs across the top. And there's one called I Want To. So if you highlight that, it'll drop down and become a block captain. there's a become, and under become is a block captain. So if you click on that, you get to this page. You'll see this nice little graphic of someone in a captain's hat. No, you don't get the cap. You just, if you did CERT training, you would get a CERT helmet, but that's about it. So ACERT does have, I think most of us that are on the board of ACERT are block captains. We certainly know block captains. Would be happy to advise on how to get started. So again, if you email albancert@gmail.com and enter "I want to be a block captain" in the subject line, that would be fantastic. If you haven't been contacted by me and haven't gotten the questionnaire emailed to you about whether you're an active block captain, also send an email and you can say, "I am still a block captain" in the subject line. That would be nice to know. So then probably me or someone else will get back to you. And, if you're just starting out, can get you on your way to contacting neighbors and collecting data and getting organized. So the block captain manual is maintained by ACERT, and it's in a version that's been somewhat updated, but probably could use some further updating. But it's a great resource, and you can get it at the same location. There's a link on the block captain page, which will give you a PDF download of the manual, which is great. So that's pretty much it on block captains. We need more. It's a satisfying thing to be. You get to learn a lot about your neighbors and meet a lot of your neighbors. But if you're on a block where you don't think there's a block captain, please consider becoming one. Thank you. And now I got questions. I see Michael has his hand raised. Go ahead and unmute, Mike.
Thank you. A couple points. One was on this mutual aid question. Before you get to mutual aid, the block captain also knows, or someone, or knows who on the block knows, there's going to potentially be people who would need evacuation assistance were we to need evacuation assistance. Otherwise, just who might need a door knock just to see if they're okay after a shake. And you did mention, Nick, that the block captain has some idea both the skills of the person on the block, and they also know something about the needs of the person on the block. One of the issues, block captain can't do everything, so hopefully you can send somebody. If you can't knock on that person's door, you can send somebody. So before we get to mutual aid, there's that. I also wanted to say about the other communities. Block captain is somewhat specific to Albany and, to my knowledge, San Francisco. I'm not aware of a block captain program in Berkeley or El Cerrito or Oakland. I will say that Richmond is interested. I don't know if I've told you this, Nick, but apparently some Richmond CERT folks have been circulating the block captain manual and are asking themselves if they ought to organize that way. I sure would love it, considering that we have a border with Richmond. On the other side of Cerrito Creek is Richmond Annex. One other thing, Berkeley and El Cerrito are organized just differently. And yes, we do use the radio to communicate with the NERTs, the neighborhood emergency response teams, and the various various ONs, the organized neighborhoods. You can't expect every town to be organized the same. So I certainly am in contact with various, they don't have block captains. They've got, I would say, team leaders of organized neighborhoods in the other communities surrounding us.
No, thanks. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I think one thing, when this original organization of block captains came into being, not too long after Loma Prieta, the city had I mean, it was a full-time employee. I don't know whether they were full-time on this, but I think they got funds to have a full-time person sort of dedicated to neighborhood emergency organization. And they started a program called ALERT, Albany Local Emergency Response Team. And that that was pre-CERT. And they developed, I think they tapped into the Boy Scouts, and a lot of Boy Scout troop leaders became block captains. A lot of people who had kids in the Boy Scouts stepped up and did that as part of kind of community effort. So I think there was this big push. They did it. They got 120 some names on a list. Everything was great. A few years went by. The person who was really organizing that left. It sort of fell back onto the personnel in the fire department to maintain it. And at that time, they kind of moved over to a CERT training. You know, they said, well, we got these block captains, but we need more people trained on how to deal with an emergency situation or medical triage and things like that. So and I think there was Fed money available for doing CERT training. So it went more to that focus, and now we're trying to bring it back together. Maintaining that many, you know, an identified person on every single box, it's a big deal, and it's a big chore. And, you know, people aren't going to do it indefinitely, so there'll be turnover and re-recruitment and things like that. So that's kind of a nut we haven't cracked yet, but are still working to reach out and try to get people more interested. The CERT program seems to work pretty well, getting people enrolled. They tend to have, you know, 10 to 15 people per class. And those people tend to be pretty interested in then perhaps becoming block captains. But it's tricky. But anyway, that's where we're at. Any other questions? I think we've done. Okay, maybe it's time to go on to the next topic.
So just a quick heads up about something called Genasys. Many of you might know something called Zonehaven. Zonehaven was a system for breaking up areas into small zones that then can be targeted very specifically with updates. And we just want to let you know that it's very, very helpful for you to know what zone you are, except Zonehaven's now Genasys. And we have on this slide a URL for where you can look up what your zone is. Albany, for example, there are 12 zones. And you can sign up for alerts based on your zone. So that's like a specific takeaway we want you to have tonight. Any questions about Genasys?
Just Raymond, I'd like to just throw in for people looking at the URL there, that URL protect.genasys.com is where you go. If you just search for Genasys, there are other companies with that name doing things. You'll get lost in a search trying to find what you're going for. Make sure you put the protect.genasys.com, and that'll get you there.
You can also, if you forget all that, you can do zonehaven.com and it will redirect you. And also, this used to be a lot less accessible for blind people, and they have changed it a bit, which is good because there are a lot of these things like this Genasys. I forget what the name of the one that LA uses is, but they're things that pop up all over. But they are important because when there's little time to say a message about which zones are in danger, they just want to roll out the playbook and 54, 49, 65, hike, you know, and get people on their way. So it is important.
Thank you, Sheila. Michael?
Yes, one of the issues arises, you know, when I look for something in my app store and it's not there the way I expect it, but it gives me something else, I become suspicious. So if you type Zonehaven into the App Store right now, and that's whether it's iPhone or Android, you're going to get redirected to Zonehaven. You're going to get redirected to Genasys, which I don't think most people in Albany have ever heard of Genasys spelled that way, when they don't necessarily connect it with a disaster preparedness measure. So I get redirected all the time and I ignore it because, well, somebody's trying to sell me something. Here's a case where if you type Zonehaven and you get redirected to Genasys in the App Store, Albany CERT is asking you, yeah, this is, that's real. That's what you should download is Genasys, not Zonehaven. It's not spyware or anything. Well, I don't think it is anyway. It's the real deal. So that's the one thing that goes there. Now, Sheila also alluded to what happens when the system is activated. We've had a few cases when it was activated, and if you were set up, you got the notifications. This is a much longer topic. We need to talk about how to set up your phones. And I'm forgetting her name, but the woman who does for Berkeley what we used to have a developer, a community development person here. She's got a presentation on how to set your phone up. I hope we can either get her or we can go over her slides. If I can find them, I'll paste them into the chat, but I can't promise right now. It's at the BDPNN website as I speak somewhere.
Thanks,
I
Michael.
will find her
Yeah.
and connect some dots
Thanks, Sheila.
because I think I know where to begin. I want to say her name is Vicky or Michelle, and those don't sound at all alike, but there were two women
I
that
just
met
remembered
that
it's Leah
did-
Greenbaum is her name. I just remembered her name.
Actually, in my work, I'm working with her a little bit. So yeah,
Has
I
a
actually even
wonderful
have her.
presentation about apps for the disaster prep. For apps for disaster prep, she's got the best stuff right now. It's at least 20 to 30 minutes, unfortunately.
Well, it's worth it. It's very worth it. And when we do it in our emergency preparedness 101, we spend not that long, but we do show all of that too. So I can find her info if you can't find it.
This is Bill Springer. I am a City of Berkeley CERT instructor, City of Albany CERT instructor for that matter. I'm also on the BDPNN board. Leah Greenbaum has left the City of Berkeley and has gone over to San Francisco with her partner and is going to have a baby, which is very nice. So Sarah Lana is in charge of Berkeley Fire Department Office of Emergency Services. So probably that would be the way to get hold of whatever this is, and I haven't seen this. So I will attempt to find out where that is.
If you don't find it, how can I do this? I'm on the BDPNN list, but let's see, I'll turn on my screen reader and I'll put my email in the chat, my work email. And you can holler at me if you need help finding Sarah, because I think I've got her.
Okay, I've got her very closely because we have a meeting with her tomorrow, so I can ask then.
That's
You
great,
go
Bill. Thank
first.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then we when we're organizing this meeting, we thought I would bring up one more topic. And Blake, did you want to speak to this idea of Listos and resources for multilingual Albany?
Sure. Well, one of the interesting programs that is put out by Cal OES is a program called Listos. And Listos, what it does is it focuses on individual household preparation and your family, taking care of yourselves. A very good program. And so when I first looked at it, I thought, oh man, we got to focus on CERT. We can't get derailed on this other stuff. And it wasn't that I didn't see the link. It just that was trying to finding the right resources to do it. Well, it turns out that the program is super strong. I saw the materials and what the Cal OES is producing, and it's so easy for a family to look at this and get prepared and go forward with it. So currently, right now, we have make sure I'm on here. Sorry. Currently, right now, we have there's a grant opportunity which we are applying for as Albany CERT and City of Albany for the hopes of up to a $25,000 grant based on what we're doing. The focus of the grant is to focus on people of different languages and disadvantaged people in our community that we can work with. And so part of the RFP requirements are defining who these communities are and how you would address them, where you would focus these funds. You can still use it for the other general population, but you have to define what it is you're doing to reach these other communities, because that's the goal of their RFP. So we will be producing that. We have a month here to get it together and put it together, and we will do that. And hopefully we will prevail to get that program. One of my hopes is with it, it would be nice to be able to give to everybody in Albany, every family in Albany, preparing your household in the language that they speak. We tend to have people, besides English, the largest speaking populations are Chinese and Vietnamese, and it goes on and on down the list, but those are the bigger ones. And so we would focus where the biggest ones are. And the goal then would be to get, I think it's like the block captain program. You create community when people start talking to each other instead of just living alone by themselves. They start to figure out as a team, what are we going to do? It creates community. So if we can get people to become instructors in the native language of Chinese and Vietnamese, and as we go down to other languages that would be important, we would find that people would become more engaged in our community that seem to be just isolated. When we see a group of people that speak differently than us, we tend not to engage, and we don't have a common background or something. Maybe this becomes a more common thing. And then ideally, if we can get the people trained and people get excited about it and they really want to take this on for their community, we can start seeing our CERT programs going to have people of those languages as well and get instructors in our CERT program that way. Now Albany becomes a much more vibrant community with, we speak a little bit different languages, but we have the same training of how we're going to work together in a disaster. So I'm excited about that. That's really what we're doing with Listos. And if there's more questions, I can answer them, but that's the overall.
So the buzzword for people with disadvantages is access and functional needs, because there's a lot of stupid stigma. I get frustrated by it about disability. And so people don't want to say that they have whatever the issue is. But the interesting thing about access and functional needs is that the access and functional needs, you can be an older adult, you can have issues with different languages, you can have you can be someone who is, a woman who is pregnant or who has small children, or a family who has small children. You can have, there's the definition of AFN is a lot broader than just disabilities, and one of them is that you don't speak English, because we have not done the equality and justice stuff that we should have been doing, Title VI, for decades. And so Listos is trying to narrow that gap. They have pamphlets on their website that they speak, they have them in 24 languages right now.
Yeah.
It's amazing. They're just amazing. Their energy is great too.
Yeah, Sheila, that's right on point. Like you said, many people, we don't have to go after just the big targets. People individually, whatever their language, they can get to that with the access and functional needs as part of this Listos grant. Is how are we helping and supporting people? One of the real challenges, some of the people with AFN, access and functional needs, some of them have a dog, a seeing eye dog, or something like that. And if there's a disaster and people are coming to evacuate them, and we don't have a method for handling their animals, their care animals that take care of them, they don't want to leave their house. They'd rather be in their house and die with their animal than get separated from their animal. And so these are real issues that we need to be aware of, and figure out ways to do that, especially as we understand through our block teams who has these kind of needs around and where are they. And have we done enough preparation for them and for ourselves to help them and work with us? So yeah, great point, Sheila.
Well, thanks, Blake.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're gonna just want to stop sharing the screen now and just have more of a time of talk to one another about what we've heard tonight, and also things that feel are important for this year that we haven't talked about. And so I just want to open the floor for that conversation. Nick.
Yeah, so not to beat a dead horse too much, but again, if you're in a role that you think you're a block captain, I see some of you here that I already know are block captains, but if you haven't gotten a recent communication from Albany CERT about being a block captain and letting us know, there's a questionnaire we want to go through. We have an agreement with the city that we can pull this list together, and make sure who's still on it and who's still active. ACERT can do that. And then people, as we contact them, we make sure they are still comfortable with being on a list that would be shared with block captains, and that if someone comes to their neighborhood and contacts the city and says, I want to know who my block captain is, the city can release their name and contact information to them. So this is something we want to just make sure everybody's on the same page. And that that people that are doing the block captain role are comfortable with having that level of availability of information. It's a pretty tight, it's not going out. It's not like it's going to be posted up on a map and anybody can go click on the map and know, hey, you live here and you're the block captain. We didn't want that level. I don't think anyone would buy into that, but at least that they can go to the city and the city can then tell them. And keeping the city as the intermediary, so the city is knowledgeable of who's the block captain, is very important too. We also think it's kind of important to have block captains communicate with one another, because there's a lot of shared information and resources that come up, and during a disaster, they may even be talking to each other and trying to negotiate some of the supplies. Anyway, block captains, very important. Please consider becoming one. Send us an email at albancert@gmail.com. Thank you.
I'd just like to say real quick on that, you might want to try sending your survey out again. I did get one, but I only saw it fairly recently because I was scanning my spam folder. And it's possible sometimes if you send out like several hundred, it will automatically go to spam, depending on what kind of settings people have. But if you break up the list and maybe send it 10 at a time, it shouldn't do that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So mine was definitely in spam, and I only noticed because I was looking for something else.
We are going to resend in a different form using a Google Forms this time, Susie. But
Okay.
what you said about the emails when we do resend, I never thought of that. That sounds right.
Yeah, and the only reason I know that is because one time my cat got lost, and I wanted to send it to a big list of people, and that just didn't work. You just need to chunk it up.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Good.
It's very annoying when you actually want to quickly send something, but and it's weird because different lists are different, and how they're configured is different, and different ISPs act different. It's nerve-wracking for anybody that wants to communicate. That's why all these people have this stupid MailChimp that wants to add a bunch of know nothing links on your thing, so you can't actually see where you're going to. I don't like those either.
Hmm.
Nona, you have your hand up.
You want to take off your mute, Nona?
Okay, the CERT refresher course is coming up. It'll be in March. If you haven't been to one, it's been a while since you've had any kind of drill or exercise, done any emergency exercises, please come. Blake's gonna send out an email with all the potential dates in March. Just to let you know, we're trying to condense 20 plus hours of emergency training into a 5-hour session. So it's a lot of challenge trying to make sure all the significant points are in that 5-hour session. So I'm just to be more ambitious, I'm trying to get something like a curriculum in a questionnaire format that will be on PowerPoint, so that that serves as a guideline for future CERT refresher courses. So if there's anyone here interested in working with me, if you have any organizational skills, I would love to, get together with you. I promise you it'll be fun. So take out your white book or whatever color it is. This is the manual training. So it'll be fun. I need someone to brainstorm with who's got good computer skills. PowerPoint is a plus. Let me know. So the refresher course could start as early as the first week in March. People will have to vote on their preferred dates. Okay, so it'll be session 1 and session 2. It'll be 2.5 hours each session. It'll be a challenge, and that includes the drills, all the emergency procedures that we learned. So it's time for everyone to review their manual training, training manuals, this one here, okay? So please do get in touch with me. I'd love to sit down and brainstorm with you. It's not going to be a lot of talking. We'll just go straight to work and look at the manuals and see what we can do as far as, making a real condensed presentation. Okay. That's it.
No,
I'm
you're
grateful
doing
to you,
amazing
Nona.
stuff. I'm just sitting from the sidelines. I've been watching what you're doing. You're doing amazing stuff. I thank you very much for reinvigorating the idea of, CERT refresher. Any kind of CERT plus is great, and you're the one who's doing it here. You and Nick, I would say.
I'd also throw out that Jack Rolls was doing quite a bit with that too, and so I appreciate his in there. It's great. The refresher course that you're doing, Nona, is hugely valuable. There's the people that commented how much they learned refreshing that they'd forgotten from the CERT training because it had been a while back. It's just amazing to get people getting back in touch and refreshing their skills. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I also want to thank Shreyansa and Sarah Schroeder, who were so quick at putting something together at the last minute, to do a presentation on the, like the most important points in these units, especially emergency procedures. How they did that, I don't know. Shreyansa even came up with slides and, visuals. I think she spent like 2 hours on it, and she came up with this huge presentation. I don't know how she did it. She
Great.
did it. So thank you.
So Blake and then Heather.
Yeah, I just want to point out to people that we have our full regular Albany CERT training. It starts on April 19 and goes through the first week of June. And it's pretty full class right now, but I've gotten a few more in the last couple of weeks, and we're adding them in. And certainly, if anybody you know wants to do CERT training, they should email albanysert@gmail.com or myself, bamon@mac.com. So albanysert@gmail.com would be a great place to go. And then we'll get there, we'll process and answer the questions for you. You can also go to the Albany CERT webpage, and there'll be a link to the to how to get a hold of us if you need to. But anyway, we're looking forward to this class. It'll be a full class again, and we're a little limited because we're down in the basement area, so we're limited to 16 people, and it's harder to do. Bill Springer is also an instructor he mentioned here with us, and so it's a little tight to go beyond that. But if we get into the main room upstairs, we could do more. But it's a little difficult to do a group larger than 16 in CERT. 16 is kind of a good number to have 4 teams of 4 or 8 teams of 2. So, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Blake and Susan and Bill, for continuing this training, putting so much work into it, and just breathing new life into our CERT community by bringing new people in.
It's been good. Thanks. I see Susan C. You want to say something here.
Yes, I just wanted to thank you for having refresher courses. There's nothing like really studying something really hard and you know it well, and then a couple years goes by. And for us, we had the pandemic, which kind of changed everything for a while. And so to have a refresher course on the methods that we have to use is excellent. It's excellent. The other reason it's so important is because we don't use all the things that we learned in the training every day, every week, which of course is a blessing. But the bad news is then we don't perfect it and we're not able to use it at the moment that we need it. So I just want to say that the refresher course is very, very important and very appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Heather.
Yeah, hi. I've lived in Albany for 6 months. I'm a renter up on Solano Hill, and I was CERT certified in Oakland for many years. My block was very organized. Truthfully, I can barely get my neighbors to talk to me here, so I assume I don't have a block captain, or it's kind of weird how unfriendly it is, but that's neither here nor there. So getting CERT certified and organized here for myself here in Albany, it's albanysert@gmail.com to kind of get involved with CERT here.
Yep.
Is that a good place? And or Blake will send out a list. I'm like, well, how does Blake know my name, and how does it all come together here? Is kind of what I'm asking. Because I've lived through Loma Prieta, I've lived through the Oakland Hills fire. I know they are very real and they are terrifying. And
Yeah.
young people do not get that at all. Yeah. So I want to be prepared where I live.
Perfect. Heather, that sounds great. Just yeah, we'd love to build off your skills, and if you need refreshing for these skills, or you want to do a certain other part of the training or get involved in the block captain program, just let us know. Yeah, I think after there's that challenge that Nick was talking about, it's been hard sometimes to figure out who the block captains are and who's still involved. So it's a program that we're on the path for, but it's a big project to build that back.
So albanysert@gmail.com.
Right.
I
That's
think Heather would make a wonderful block captain, don't you, Blake?
I think so.
If I get my neighbors to talk to me, yes.
Can you tell us roughly what block that is?
I'm on Polk Street near Solano Avenue.
Yes, I think I have an idea we lost that
Yeah.
person was lost to history.
Okay, yeah.
Well, that's perfect. We will follow up with you for sure, Heather.
Thanks, Heather. Sheila, you have your hand up.
So I'm trying to remember the name of this, but the Oakland CERT, I took mine last year, and it was a hybrid, which you guys may not want to do, but hear me all the way through first, and you may have some different permutations of it or something. But there's this CSTI, and I was trying to remember what it stood for, The last word was institute. The first word was California. And I think the T was
Specialized
training, but
training.
huh?
Specialized training is the ST.
Oh, that's it.
So this
CSTI.
is the organization that has the role of managing the online learning system for online CERT training in California. When you
Yes,
log
and it's good.
in, those who do have vision will see a guy with a gun on the front page. It's a little bit disturbing, but that is the organization that runs the learning management system for online CERT training.
And it's not very accessible. And I don't know
Not
if they
very
fixed it, but I
accessible even to people who have good visual and audio acuity and who can work with their fingers.
Yeah,
There are issues with the videos. Yes, there are.
they've gotten a large piece of my mind. But I say that only to say, first of all, they have the units of the manual as separate PDFs. There is Oakland set it up for us, and Oakland paid, or there was some sort of um, handshake that they did with the state for this, but I'm not clear on that. But that's Kyle Tremblay and Brianna Horton. They could tell you. I could give you their contact info if you're interested. I don't know how to condense that, but I bet there were a lot of good videos on it where things could be condensed perhaps. And
In one of the smallest towns in the East Bay, we have to pick our battles. And making the CSTI infrastructure easier to use for everyone is well beyond, I would say, is well beyond Albany CERT's capability.
I'm not saying that. I'm only saying you're looking to make a 5-hour thing out of a 24-hour thing. But what I'm suggesting is that maybe there's a way to do that. I don't know, but and I don't mean that you have to rewrite the dang thing. I just mean that they might allow you to take what you want, or I don't know, maybe some discussion can be had. I don't know.
Nona, are you finding the learning material, the original learning materials, they're multimedia materials of use? Some of it is on YouTube. You can just,
Yeah.
Bill's the expert in that.
Yeah. Well, last time we did use some YouTube stuff, but it's always good to do like an actual drill. Get people involved in using their bodies and using their tools and equipment.
And they say that on there too, so it's not like they.
Yeah, as opposed to just watching a video.
Right.
A slide. Yeah. That's one of the comments that somebody made, that we need to have more participation in actual doing the exercises.
Yeah, I'm not fond of that hybrid model because it takes the instructor away from the students for a good deal of it until you actually go out in the field or whatever and get your hands on it. But the interaction with instructors is crucial throughout the program. And that's why I'm not happy with the hybrid format.
We had office hours every week that we could go to, and I went to all but one of them. And I'm just, these are ideas. You don't like.
No, that's good. I think it's the whole idea of the refreshers. It's not the CERT training. It's not the hybrid course. The hybrid courses was great during pandemic, but for some people. But we've found that we've had very few people be able to complete that course here in reality in Albany. But we have had a couple of people go through it. But the training is fantastic in person. The refresher training that Nona is talking about is taking the CERT grads who might have forgotten some of their skills and doing quick reminders of doing these drills, and people just trying to trigger those synapses again that, oh yeah, that's what that was for. That's why I had this in my pack. Oh yeah, now I remember how we're following this procedure to do that. And people seem to get very excited. We heard many great reviews from the refresher course attendees. So yeah, that's the difference of the two.
I
So we
took
passed
the
the
I
8:30.
took the online
We-
version. I passed the online version.
Okay.
I decided I didn't care. I took the entire in-person. Nona, you said a mouthful about hands-on. Bill Springer, you said a mouthful about the relation with the instructor. And I totally endorse what you both say about hands-on and one-to-one look each other in the eye as you're. That's the way I learn better.
So we've passed the 8:30 mark, and I know that Nick has had his hand, so just give Nick the last word here.
Oh, shoot. I always hate having last word. Yeah, I just put in the chat that it is kind of confusing with Albany CERT, but if you want to see our webpage, it's albanicert.org. And then we do have a kind of group mail set up, which is albany@groups.io. And then if you want to just email someone, if you want to ask a question or get into the classes or volunteer as a block captain or something, it's albanicert@gmail.com is our email. And this whole thing, it's all of, I mean, I hate to think we're a highly organized group. There are about 5 of us that run this thing, and we kind of do it by the seat of our pants. So sometimes it'll take a bit before someone responds. Anyway,
If you want to join us, we're definitely always looking for new people. We meet about twice a month to keep this organization going. And our next community meeting is the next fifth Wednesday is May 29th.
Yeah, and to what Raymond said, this is not an exclusive group. If you are interested in being involved with us, we welcome other people to join us in the organizing. But yeah,
I'll send out notes maybe in the next day or two, and so please join the mailing list, and you can get those notes.
And thank you for organizing this. You did a great job putting this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just shot out an
Very well.
email and I'll follow up on the webpage.
great. Thanks.
and Raymond, do we know where the recording of the meeting will be? Or you'll make
I'll
that?
be sending the link to the recording too. It's
Okay.
it's in the notes. There's a bit.ly link that links to some notes that we keep for the meeting, and I'll post that in there as well as send out an email on the group's IO list.
Okay.
So let me write out the
Bit.ly.
bit.ly. So it's the same pattern. I'm just writing it out. So it's in the chat. Bit.ly Albany CERT 2024-0131 for today's date.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'll put the notes there, links to the slides, links to the recording of this meeting.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Sean,
Good night,
See
everyone.
you later.
Thanks, everyone. Great meeting.
Oh, yes. Thanks, Raymond.
Thank you, Bill.